Hello and welcome to a new Hi-Fi News etc. video. And what have I got for you this time around? I always ask that question because I don't know myself. So let's have a think. Well, we've got some Hi-Fi News, of course. There's only two Hi-Fi News items for you this time. Why? Well, because apart from the trivia, which you're going to get in a second, there's a reader's question, which I'm going to be addressing in a moment, and also there's a fairly large tip, a hint tip, not so much aimed at hi-fi as vinyl, and you'll see what I mean when we get there. Anyway, trivia. And on last week's trivia question, France was the theme, and we're going to continue with France as that theme, and we're going to mix it a little bit with history. And the question is, which album by a Welshman was named after Canadian historian Margaret Macmillan's book about the peace conference that followed the First World War? And again, which album by a Welshman was named after Canadian historian Margaret Macmillan's book about the peace conference that followed the First World War? Bit of a humdinger, that one, isn't it? Well, have a little think. Please don't do any Googling or any of that research on the internet nonsense, because it'll ruin the whole thing. Have a little think. I will give you some time to consider your answer, and then I'll tell you the answer at the end of this video. Until then, folks, Hi-Fi News. First up, we have a wireless speaker from Sonos, out on sale right now, and yes, there's reviews out there, but I still thought it worthy of your attention in case you may have missed it. The Era 100 from Sonos is a wireless speaker with Bluetooth 5.0 functionality. It's minimal in design terms, with a matte white or a matte black finish. There are new drivers in this one, incidentally, hence the shape. This one actually has stereo sound. So you get a pair of tweeters in there, angled with waveguides fitted, plus a mid-bass unit that's 25% larger than the example found in the One speaker, and this Era 100 replaces the older One speaker. A Class D amplifier drives the whole shebang. You control the speaker with capacitive touch controls, and that includes a rather interesting volume strip that changes gain when you run your fingers along it. Of course, if you fancy, you can use the Sonos app for control. The Sonos TruePlay Room Calibration app is also included. There's also a USB-C socket to attach external devices. Prices, well, I've got three for you, either £249 or $249 or €279, which is about £50 over and above the earlier Sonos One, which ain't too bad considering it's been 4 years, and we all know what the pandemic did to prices, hey? Next up, we have a Valve headphone amplifier from Auris. The Auris HA2SE balanced valve headphone amplifier uses 4 7-pin PL95 pentode power new old stock valves, or the EL95 valves, and there's a switch on the back to flick between the two, depending which you have. And why is there a switch? Well, each of these valve types are heated in a slightly different way, hence that switch. There's also a single ECC81 dual triode input valve. The transformers inside are manually wound on double C cores, produced by Auris Audio themselves. On the front panel, you have an on-off switch, input line selector, and 4-pin XLR balanced output. In the middle is a main volume control knob, and right next to that is a 6.3 single-ended headphone output. On the right side is the headphone impedance selector, spanning 50 all the way up to 600 ohms. On the top of the unit, you'll find the valves, and they're protected with a little grille separating them from the controls. On the back of the unit, you can find XLR and RCA inputs, as well as a pre-output. In the middle is that little switch I was telling you about. There's also the power cord socket and an on-off switch. Now, in terms of prices, well, I don't have any, although I do know that the original HA2 SE, as opposed to the Plus, the original SE was priced around, in dollar terms, about $1,600. So I wouldn't be surprised if it was somewhere in that kind of region. Anyway, if I get any updated price news, I'll pass that on to you in a later video. So that's your news. Let's look at our viewer question, shall we? This week we have a question from a YouTube viewer named A115Rat. Hello, A115Rat. And the King Rat says, I have a Riga P3, which is the turntable, of course, with an exact cartridge, but I also have the Roksan Atessa integrated amplifier. I've been looking at upgrading my deck. Would the Atessa turntable be a good move, or the Project Debut Pro, or could these be perceived as more of a sideways move? I like the phono stage in the Roksan amp, but I also have an Hifi phono, the basic version that I've been switching between for comparison. Also, I've seen the Roksan turntable reduced to £599 in some retailers. Any help appreciated. Many thanks, Paul. Pardon? The Roksan Atessa turntable, upwards of £1,000 worth of turntable, for sale at £599. I could not believe my ears, so I did a bit of a Google. And yeah, it's there. Not everyone is selling it for $599. But hey, look, there are a couple of places. Now, I have no idea why this is happening, and I did talk to the company, and the person I spoke to at the company itself was just as confused as me. So I'm not really sure what's occurring here. I originally thought when I saw the price drop that maybe the Atessa was being deleted and the company was shifting stock, which, you know, kind of happens, hey. But no, apparently not. It's not being deleted as far as I'm aware and as far as I've been told anyway. So why this turntable in some areas is being sold at $599, goodness only knows. Now, as much as I love the Project Debut Pro, that is inherently a lower cost turntable. The Roksan Atessa is inherently of a higher order. It's the next rung up. So let me tell you, you have to buy the Roksan Atessa turntable now. In fact, my advice is get your credit card and run to your computer right now. In fact, go, don't even see the end of this video. Buy $599 for a Roksan Atessa turntable. It's a complete bargain. Oh, and finally, use the external phono amplifier with your new Atessa. Good luck. Let me know if you get one. That's the rather surprising viewer question. Whew. Next up, let's look at a hint, a tip. Now, this particular hint tip is vinyl based, as I've said at the beginning of the video, as opposed to hi-fi. But I think it's necessary, the actual tip, to avoid damage. Not so much to the vinyl disc itself, more to the sleeve, especially if you're a collector or if you have vinyl on your shelf. Maybe you haven't played it in a while and possibly won't play it for a while to come. What am I talking about? I'll get there in a sec, just bear with me. Now, when second-hand vinyl records are concerned, I don't know about you, but I like to upgrade my vinyl now and again, when I can, and when the vinyl warrants it. Of course, I might, for example, later find that I'm not completely 100% happy with it. Maybe there's a sound issue, maybe there's an annoying click or three, possibly as the result of physical damage. There might be the odd groove jump, or the sleeve might be creased just a bit too much. There may be excess ring wear, or the sleeve might show the result of some sort of spill. So, if and when I can, I will upgrade that record for a better example, cleaner, smoother play, all of that good stuff. Now, if you're familiar with this here channel, you'll know that I like my prog, and within that genre, I'm particularly partial to Genesis, and I have an LP here of their very early recordings. Let me get it for you. And this is it. It's on the Decca label. It's called Rock Roots. So very early stuff, 60s era kind of stuff. Very early Peter Gabriel there, if you can see that. So anyway, I bought this one cheap, and I bought it at a record fair. And I thought I would take a chance. Bad move. Track one, right at the beginning. Track one was not a happy bunny. It jumped all over the place. After track one, the rest of the album was okay, actually, but track one obviously played a lot. Well, as I say, that jumped and it really wound me up and continues to wind me up. And what prompted me to upgrade this was because the new one out there was and is in mint condition. And I really mean mint condition, because it was still sealed. Hence, the record itself is beautifully clean, although I will still clean this in my ultrasonic cleaner, of course. Let me show you the other LP. In fact, I'll put both together and you can compare and contrast. So this is the older original and this is the new one. This is the replacement. This was the one that was in shrink wrap. And for those people who are very OCD about these things, and a lot of record collectors are, can you see? I don't know if you can. I'll bring these to camera, but just for here now, I don't know if you can see, but there's a difference in coloring. This one is a much darker color. I don't know if you can see the grill on this dance set down here. Much darker and richer. Whoops. Than this one. In fact, you can see. Now I thought to myself, sun damage straight away. But no, the actual coloring is far more evenly spread. The lighter tones are far more evenly spread. It's not spotty or fading, as I would imagine sun damage to look. So no, and actually on the rear of this LP, there are some slight differences. So this is a slightly different pressing. But anyway, that's by the by, and I quite like all that detailed stuff. So I thought I'd bring it to your attention in case anybody else out there does as well. The problem with shrink wrap, though, is when you shrink wrap an object, more than likely over time, it continues to shrink. Now, you may have heard this before, and it's not a problem just for vinyl. It can affect any older item. Over time, the shrink wrap contracts and then finally damages whatever the fragile contents it is holding. Now, that issue with contracting shrink wrap, that's been a problem for this particular record. Well, not the record itself, of course, but the actual sleeve. And I've removed the shrink wrap from the actual sleeve because I could see the damage it was doing. So my hint is this: if you buy yourself a mint condition LP still sealed, save your poor sleeve and remove the shrink wrap itself totally. I do know some collectors who will buy a mint condition LP, a second-hand LP, with the shrink wrap still intact. And what they'll do, they'll slit an opening to be able to take the record out, play the record, put it back in, keep the shrink wrap intact on the rest of the sleeve. Again, to my mind, that can be an issue because I reckon there's still some shrinkage on the rest of the cardboard, and that's not good. Even if the sleeve looks fine at the moment, chances are in the future that shrinkage will result in damage. Now, another related problem with old shrink wrap is that it can bond to the actual sleeve itself. And I'll bring this to camera and you'll see for yourself what I'm talking about. Now, can you see here? There is a piece. I'll angle this. Maybe you can get a, can you see there? There is a piece of shrink wrap which will not come off. I will get it off eventually, but it's a toughie. It's just about here. You can see it. You can see the shiny bit as I do this. So that piece of shrink wrap, that's from the original shrink wrap, and it's proving difficult to get rid of. I will eventually, but you know, it's going to take a little bit of work. And one more related hint, if you do remove the shrink wrap, save any promotional items on the wrap itself. They add authenticity to the record. These little marketing bits and pieces, they give the record context, a sense of place, and they provide a kind of a slice of social history to the record itself. And when I bought this example, there was indeed a rather large price sticker on the front, and I will show you now. And there it is, special purchase only, folks, from a place called Music Point at £3.29. What a bargain. And Music Point, I'm not familiar with Music Point. Is anybody out there familiar with Music Point? I assume it's a record shop, some sort of retailer. So yeah, I would love to know, where is Music Point from? Is it a London-based place somewhere else? Maybe you can tell me. But that neat little price sticker, well, that lives permanently inside here. So I will end my rap about shrink wrap by saying this: unwrap the wrap. And that's a lot, but before we go, let's give you an answer for the trivia question. And the rather academic question for this week is, which album by a Welshman was named after the Canadian historian Margaret Macmillan's book about the peace conference that followed the First World War? And the answer is Paris 1919, John Cale's third solo album, which came out in 1973, was inspired by the book Paris 1919, 6 Months That Changed the World, whose author, Margaret Macmillan, was the great-granddaughter of Prime Minister of the UK at the time, David Lloyd George. Cale actually appears on the cover in the costume of one of the diplomats who gathered in the French capital to decide who should pay for the war that had just finished. The decisions arrived at in Paris accidentally set in train the events that led to World War II. Well, it was one of the reasons. It's a complex subject. Anyway, thank you very much for staying to the end of this video. And if I could ask you down yonder, if you could click on the like and subscribe buttons, that would be much appreciated. There are other social media links down in the description, including my Facebook group, which you're welcome to join. There's also a website link, and there's all kinds of stuff over there you won't see here, folks. Plus, there's my Patreon page, which features all kinds of exclusive material, whether it's video-based or text-based, and that helps to fund this channel. So, by supporting me on Patreon, you're actually helping to keep this thing going. I'll be back on Sunday with a review, and I hope to have your company then. Until then, folks, bye-bye for now.